no one really expected Earth to make it to the galactic stage. Not seriously. Sure, they had rockets and satellites and a weird obsession with launching cars into orbit, but from the perspective of the larger universe, humans were still, well, kind of a cosmic joke. A primitive species that thought influencers were important and used Bluetooth to connect their toasters. Cute, harmless, loud, yes, but not a threat. And so, when the Intergalactic Council did their routine scan of developing planets, they logged Earth as Category C, contains life, likely explodes itself in 2 to 3 millennia. Then promptly moved on to more pressing issues, like the Nebula trade routes dispute and who brought that weird casserole to the Fiscal Committee luncheon. But that was before Dave. Dave was an intern, not a special intern, not a brilliant intern, just Dave. He worked in a beige building filled with beige cubicles under beige fluorescent lights. He drank his coffee black, not out of preference, but because someone always forgot to restock the creamer. His primary task? Filing backlogged tax documents that nobody cared about. Interdepartmental transfer logs, surplus toilet paper write-offs, one time even a form requesting reimbursement for a stapler. That's who Dave was, until he heard the transmission. NASA had been messing around again, something about reconfiguring deep space antennas to stream archived YouTube footage to Mars rovers. It was meant to be a morale booster. Cats playing piano, goats yelling like people. But in the process, they accidentally intercepted a secure Galactic Council frequency. And Dave, scrolling through a 314-page spreadsheet titled Midwest Fuel Subsidy Anomalies 1994 to 1998, happened to be sitting in the right server room at the wrong time. The message was boring, absolutely dull. A quarterly council report on trade activity in the outer spiral and estimated earnings from cross-sector licensing deals. But one phrase caught Dave's eye. Unreported revenue from non-compliant species. He blinked, scrolled back. Wait, revenue? From alien commerce? With no tax filings? His heart skipped a beat. He zoomed in just to be sure. No record of declared income to Earth. No deductions. No withholdings. Outrageous. He leaned back in his squeaky chair, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Oh my God, he whispered. They're not paying taxes? To anyone else, it might have been an amusing little tidbit. Something to post about online, a meme, maybe a joke with a UFO in a W-2 form. But not for Dave. No, Dave was different. Something deep in his soul stirred, a fire that had long been buried under toner cartridges and abandoned file folders. He opened a fresh spreadsheet, and he began to audit. By the end of the week, Dave had filed Form 1099-GZ, Galactic Earnings Disclosure, Form XR12B, Non-Terrestrial Business Entity Report, and even Schedule FTL, Faster Than Light Income Assessment, a form so obscure it hadn't been used since the Pentagon tried to tax dreams in the 70s. Nobody really noticed. Not at first. The IRS mainframe flagged his entry as high priority, low plausibility, but it didn't get reviewed because Cheryl from compliance had food poisoning, and the auto sorter was rerouting alien claims into the Sci-Fi Convention cosplay expense folder. But the letters got sent. Printed on standard IRS paper, sealed in standard IRS envelopes, delivered by a repurposed CubeSat that Dave duct taped a mail slot to. The first recipient? The Crul'Thak Empire, a race of reptilian warlords, 10 feet tall, scales like obsidian. Their battle hymns made black holes flinch. They'd never been defeated in combat, until they received an envelope. No weapon, no virus, just an envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. You owe the United States government $47,203,987,042 in back taxes. Please remit within 30 Earth days or face penalties. The Supreme Warlord blinked. Read it again. What is depreciation? His second-in-command, clutching the letter with trembling claws, muttered, Sir, I think we've been audited. Confusion turned to panic. What happens if we don't pay? And in the shadows of the war room, an ancient advisor, long ignored, long mocked, whispered, There will be follow-up paperwork. Silence. Cold, sweaty, terrifying silence. Back on Earth, Dave printed out another sheet, labeled it Crul'Thak, pending response. He whistled softly to himself, sipping coffee, watching the ink dry. He had no idea what kind of storm he'd unleashed. No clue that entire civilizations would soon crumble under the weight of bureaucracy. He just wanted things to be fair. Was that so wrong? He glanced at the next name on the transmission list. Xelor Prime Consortium of Collective Intellects. Oh boy, he muttered, cracking his knuckles. Hope they itemized those telepathic subscriptions. He grinned, and he opened another spreadsheet. The Crul'Thaks tried to ignore the letter for about 12 minutes. Then a second envelope appeared, in the middle of a military briefing, right on top of a tactical map showing 27 invasion targets across the Orion Arm. It pinged softly as it landed. No portal, no transporter beam, just envelope. Again, the High Warlord didn't blink this time. He stared at it like it might explode. One of his generals, bravest of the brave, reached out with a trembling claw and peeled it open. Another sheet. This one said, reminder, your previous balance is now 47,3,293,142.1 T plus interest. Please respond or penalties will escalate. Interest, they scrambled to decipher the symbols. Was this a threat? A curse? A psychological weapon? It smelled like coffee and toner and bureaucracy. Then the hologram appeared. Not a weapon, not a virus. No, it was worse. It was a PowerPoint presentation, projected in 4:3 aspect ratio, with stock clip art. The title, Understanding Earth's Galactic Tax Policy, A Beginner's Guide. The first slide said, let's crunch some numbers, with a smiling cartoon calculator giving a thumbs up. The room screamed. Meanwhile, on Xelor Prime, the greatest minds of the collective were confused. They had intercepted the same message as the Crul'Thaks. But unlike the warlords, they weren't afraid. They were curious, intrigued, amused even. What a delightful primitive fiction, said Mind Node 76F, sipping thought energy through a memory straw. But then the audit packet arrived. 17,000 pages. Every page had footnotes. Every footnote had cross-references. Every cross-reference pointed to Earth-based tax code sections, some of which contradicted each other, some of which referenced themselves in a recursive loop. They tried to process it. One by one, the mind nodes started, twitching, thought stutters, cognitive misfires, a complete collapse of their central processing ego thread. Mind node 12B just sat there muttering, line 34B, not deductible unless adjusted by wait. They recompiled their consciousness into a smaller format, hoping the reduced complexity would help. It didn't. Then came the real blow. Dave had marked their telepathic groupthink subscription revenue as unearned psychic dividends. Taxable. No, whispered Mind Node Alpha. No one could have known that term. That term was invented in our dreams. And then, a knock at the airlock. It was a man, a human, with glasses, khakis, a small rolling suitcase, and a badge that read, Internal Revenue Service, Special Intergalactic Division. He smiled and asked politely, do you have a quiet place I can work from? I'll need a desk and possibly a whiteboard. The hive screamed as one. They offered him money, crystals, energy, an entire moon. He declined. Just need access to your books. The next 6 hours were a blur of receipts, declarations, missed write-offs, and painfully cheerful banter. Wow, Dave said, flipping through a glowing datapad. You guys depreciated this orbital mind array way too slowly. Want me to walk you through how to refile? He was trying to help. That's what made it worse. One by one, the collective minds began to fragment. They didn't even resist. They just started filing for Chapter 13 intergalactic bankruptcy. Back on Earth, Dave was promoted again. He now had a team. Other interns, just like him, mildly caffeinated, horrifyingly meticulous. Their group chat was called Audit Bros Galactic Edition. They were unstoppable. Meanwhile, panic spread across the stars. Entire civilizations went dark. The Ular Consortium activated a total financial lockdown protocol, which essentially meant setting fire to all ledgers, vaporizing their accountants, and praying no one ever found their offshore asteroid accounts. Too late. Dave's team had already sent a pre-audit questionnaire, digitally, psychically, and in one case, by fax. The galaxy was spinning, spiraling. Who were these humans? Why did they care about capital gains more than conquest? Why did they casually enforce itemized meal expenses across an entire quadrant? One desperate ambassador tried to reason with them. We are willing to surrender. Just stop the audits. Dave furrowed his brow, genuinely confused. Surrender? Oh no, we're not invading you. You just need to file correctly. Want me to show you how to use TurboTax Galactic? The ambassador fainted. And so the galaxy watched as world after world fell, not to violence, not to war, but to the slow, unstoppable march of fiscal responsibility. And Dave? Dave just updated his checklist and said to no one in particular, "Next up, the Tharkons. Hope they kept their receipts." The Tharkons were not afraid of anything. Not gravity storms, not sentient suns, not even the time their entire fleet got swallowed by a dimension that only spoke an interpretive dance. They were conquerors, mathematicians of war. Every battle, every invasion, every act of galactic expansion, calculated to 10 decimal places and executed with terrifying precision. And yet, there they were, trembling, staring at a single line on a human-issued audit notice. Please explain line item 22, interdimensional relocation costs, non-reimbursed. It made no sense, not because they couldn't understand the words. They translated it instantly into all 47 of their active languages. It was the concept that broke them. They had built their empire on conquest, on force, on sheer dominance of physics itself. But none of it, prepared them for paperwork. It had started when their finance minister, a three-eyed being named Jakor with a gold-plated skull, received a USB drive, a physical USB, hand-delivered by a drone shaped like a novelty calculator. He plugged it in, out of curiosity. The screen lit up. A spreadsheet unfolded, endlessly. Formulas, checkboxes, conditional formatting, and worst of all, pop-up tips. Jakor screamed. He tried to unplug it, but the drive had merged with the terminal. It printed one single message: "You are now under preliminary audit." They tried to fight it. Of course they did. The Tharkons had entire divisions dedicated to bureaucratic warfare. They had weaponized signatures, weaponized waiting rooms. They once delayed a planetary annexation by filing a hostile permit dispute against the invaders. But Earth didn't play like that. They didn't threaten. They didn't posture. They just sent forms and kept sending them. The more the Tharkons resisted, the more absurd the audits became. Dave's team flagged them for missing supporting documents for travel expenses exceeding 10,000 light years, then sent an auto-generated questionnaire with 386 questions and a mandatory feedback survey at the end. No one had prepared for this. The council called an emergency session. Every species, every faction. The galaxy's most powerful minds gathered in panic, shouting over one another, "They're taxing dark energy!" They asked for receipts from before the Big Bang. They sent a follow-up request through dreams. I woke up thinking about line item depreciation. Order was restored only when a representative from the Florian Crystal Hive floated to the center and said, in a trembling voice, "We tried to bribe one. Just one, with an asteroid made entirely of platinum and emotional validation." The room went quiet. The Hive representative continued. He refused. Said he couldn't accept gifts over 25 credits without filing a conflict of interest disclosure. Then he handed me the form. Silence. Then a quiet, broken voice from the back. "They can't be corrupted." That's when the fear became real. Because violence had rules, hierarchies, weaknesses, but honest, rule-obsessed, underpaid civil servants? They were invincible. The galaxy began to understand the truth. Earth didn't know it was at war. Humanity hadn't declared anything. They hadn't even noticed what they were doing. They were just following protocol. They weren't trying to conquer anyone. They were just collecting taxes as a matter of principle. And somehow, that was worse. Because there was no negotiating with principle, no surrendering to procedure. One by one, the council leaders began to crack. Some fled. Others tried to go back in time to retroactively claim deductions. One race attempted to reclassify their entire civilization as a non-profit performance art collective. Dave denied the request. "Doesn't meet the educational requirement," he noted, "but feel free to appeal. Here's the form." The final straw came when the Varthon warlords, beings of pure neural flame and ego, received a letter marked "Third and Final Notice." Inside, a smiling cartoon envelope holding a clipboard. On the back, a QR code that led to an online portal with two-factor authentication. Their emperor screamed, "We must destroy Earth. We must crush this madness before it spreads." But by then, it had already spread. New races were adopting Earth-style audits just to protect themselves. Civilizations that had warred for centuries suddenly agreed on a shared tax code out of terror. Small systems started listing Earth as a dependent, just to avoid confusion. And somewhere, somehow, a rogue trader set up a secret shrine to Saint Dave, patron of receipts. And Earth still didn't know. Dave was too busy fixing a printer jam in the office. He sighed, pulled out the crumpled page, and muttered, "Why does this always happen on a Friday?" Then paused, sniffed the air. Who reheated fish in the break room microwave again? He went back to work. The galaxy held its breath, because for all their power, all their knowledge, all their technology, they had poked the sleeping accountant. And now, the audit was just beginning. The surrender was not what anyone expected. It didn't come with parades, or banners, or even a proper announcement. It happened quietly, awkwardly, during a conference call. A universal emergency Zoom meeting, translated in over 900 languages, opened with a laggy hollow image of the Galactic Council's supreme chair being, who looked absolutely exhausted. His antennae drooped, his robe was wrinkled. Behind him, someone was clearly crying into a calculator. The screen blinked. Dave appeared. He looked cheerful. "Hi, everyone. Thanks for hopping on. I know scheduling across time zones is tricky, but I just wanted to follow up on some outstanding documentation." "We surrender," screamed the chair being, slamming a tentacle onto his own face. Dave blinked. "Sorry, what was that?" "We surrender. We surrender, Earth, all of us." There was silence, awkward, glitchy silence. Dave squinted at the screen. I think there's been a misunderstanding. This isn't a war. This is just a routine compliance check. Honestly, it'll go smoother if you guys just answer a few questions about your expense categories." The chair being whimpered. In the background, a Xelorian collapsed into a pile of trembling neurons. One brave soul, a Florian negotiator who had once survived a meteor punch to the thorax, raised a shaky tendril. "If we submit everything," he whispered, "do we still have to do the quarterly estimates?" Dave smiled kindly. "Oh, yes. And don't forget to factor in any travel reimbursements over 200 light years. Those can trigger a multi-jurisdictional withholding clause." The negotiator imploded from stress. Across the galaxy, worlds fell into chaos, not from destruction, but from calculation. A planet-wide civilization known for its warrior monks and sacred battle chants suddenly converted their temples into walk-in accounting offices. One race of proud telepaths began wearing tinfoil hats, not to block mind reading, but to keep tax thoughts from being audited. And the Tharkons? They simply left, abandoned their homeworld, packed up their entire civilization into escape pods, left behind a sign floating in orbit, "Gone. Don't forward mail." Back on Earth, nobody noticed. The media was busy covering a celebrity squirrel that had learned how to skateboard. Dave, meanwhile, was refilling the office printer. He had no idea what he had done. No clue that entire interstellar economies had collapsed under his digital forms. That beings once worshipped as gods were now comparing line items in silence, terrified of making a math error. No, he just wanted things to be organized. "Hey, Dave," someone called from the break room. "You gonna file your travel report for that alien field visit?" "Yeah," he replied, sipping lukewarm coffee. "Just waiting on one more signature. They keep signing with mucus. It's a formatting nightmare." Then he sat down, calmly, and opened a new folder labeled Emerging Markets Andromeda Cluster. The horror wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because now, humans had realized that the galaxy was full of taxable revenue, and all it took was a few overworked civil servants with too much coffee and unlimited jurisdiction. The audit would spread to corners of the universe no one had dared touch, to dimensions that hadn't even invented decimals yet, to ancient species who had no concept of ownership, but who would soon be asked to report income from existential energy fluctuations. One species tried to fight back with a paradox bomb, something designed to erase the memory of taxes from every sentient being within 6 galaxies. It backfired. The bomb exploded into 199s. They rained from the sky like confetti, sparkly, terrifying. An entire moon was buried under Schedule Cs. And Dave? Dave just tilted his head at the report on his screen. Missing attachments. He clicked the follow-up button. At that very moment, across the stars, 100 civilizations screamed in unison. They had tried everything: threats, diplomacy, reverse-engineered time, even appeals to higher metaphysical court systems. Nothing worked. Nothing could stop the humans. Because humans weren't trying to rule. They weren't trying to conquer. They were just being thorough. They didn't even know they'd won. And that, more than anything, was what broke the galaxy. The final, fatal realization wasn't that humans were powerful. It was that they were oblivious. Oblivious. relentless, and completely unbothered by the absolute chaos they'd caused. One last message arrived on Earth weeks later, an official communique from what was left of the Intergalactic Council. It said only this: "We yield. Please send your accountant." Dave printed it, hole-punched it, and filed it under miscellaneous. He smiled, sipped his coffee, and somewhere, very far away, a star went supernova trying to itemize a snack reimbursement.